Good afternoon, I'm Paweł Trzaskowski and you're watching World Talks. President Karol Nawrocki vetoes the bill that would allow Poland to loan 44 billion euro for defense spendings. The loan, known as SAFE program, was a flagship program of the government. Is the consensus over Polish defense no more in Poland, and will it become a victim of political infighting? To discuss this, I am joined today by Professor Renata Mieńkowska-Norkiene, political scientist from the University of Warsaw. Professor, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me here.
So, would you say that Polish defense has become a collateral of political infighting in Poland?
I'm afraid so, and not for the first time, but this time it's, I would say, the hardest hit into the Polish security program and safety dreams, let's put it that way. Although I think that with the ricochet of this particular decision of President Karol Nawrocki, will be hit the most the Polish police and the Polish customs officer and border control officers, because they will not, most probably will not get any money at all, while the government, with its plan B, will try to rescue as much money for the army, for the production, for those factories that produce military equipment as possible, and hopefully it will be like close to 100% what might go to the army. But let's not forget that it will be most probably a little bit later than planned, because the European Commission, I'm an expert of Team Europe Direct, so we have quite a lot of update on what has been going on there. They are really ready to help us, let's say, use those this money as soon as possible, but it will be most probably not sooner than in April.
So before we dig deeper into the possible implications of yesterday's veto, I would like to ask you about the rationale behind it. What drove President Nawrocki to veto the bill?
Well, absolutely honestly, it's a totally politically grounded decision. Let me be honest about that, because as a political scientist, I can tell you that this money would be a huge booster for the Polish economy, because in particular in those constituencies where now law and justice is quite strong, like in Podkarpackie voivodeship, there are located most of those factories and most of those companies which will use the money from SAFE program the most. And this is obviously a big problem for both Karol Nawrocki, in particular also his political patron, which is Jarosław Kaczyński from Law and Justice. And I think that was the big problem, because, you know, if those regions, if those constituencies got all this money and got this boost up in their economy, and also taxes paid there and so on, their welfare would be raised enormously and their economic growth would be huge. So they might get reoriented towards Donald Tusk and his government as those who gave the money to them. So it would be extremely dangerous for Law and Justice, which still counts on winning the elections in 2027. And President Nawrocki, by vetoing the SAFE law, because we don't need actually the law in order to get the money, but the money will not be in, you know, a full sum, and it will also be a little bit prolonged, and also not everyone will get the money, like the police, as I have already said, will not. So I think this was the main reason behind that. Plus, Karol Nawrocki just wants to become a leader of the whole right wing of the Polish political scene, and he wants to show off as a very tough person with no option for a compromise. By this, he's obviously breaking the Polish constitution, because according to Article 134, he should be the one who, leads in the army, but he does it through the government, through the Minister of Defense. And according to Article 126, he should be the person who really protects the continuity of government and governing in Poland, and security, safety are those areas in which he now cannot make 180 degrees turn, and
So
he does it.
do you think that we will see now some constitutional fallout of this decision?
I'm afraid not, because we have only two institutions which actually might now investigate the case and then actually pull president to the full responsibility for that. And it's the Constitutional Tribunal, which is now undergoing, let's say, a restructuring, which hopefully will bring its full operationality, but not really soon. And because it has been totally destroyed by Law and Justice, by Foreign Minister of Justice Zbigniew Ziobro. And only today, actually, new judges to the Constitutional Tribunal were elected, and the State Tribunal, which is really not operating. And if it ever gathers, it's usually a scandal. So I'm afraid that the previous government has done so much damage to those institutions that now it's very, very difficult to actually even check the constitutionality of all those actions of the president.
According to the polls, the majority of Poles support Poland taking EU defense loans. You mentioned that Law and Justice will be losing their constituency, right-wing constituency, because of this decision. So what was the calculation behind the veto? I mean, why do it if there is so much damage?
There is so much damage, but the president hopes that this will be forgotten until 2027, when the elections are there, while in case he hadn't vetoed the law, he might one day wake up, being aware of the fact that those constituencies, that people there, the Polish society in those constituencies in those regions, they realize that the government has done a lot, and therefore they should be thankful, and Donald Tusk and his government are actually worth re-electing. And I'm afraid that would be the case when the money actually brings its fruits and its profits. While now, he counts on the fact that in such a polarized society, he will consolidate those right-wing oriented, those concrete voters. And even if Law and Justice pays some price, that it will be forgotten until 2027, but it will definitely not help the government. I would say that, if all those institutions which should protect the Constitution were operating, he might have had more doubts. But I'm afraid in this case, he may just simply count on this mythical polarization, which is actually not that mythical. It's true, actually, in Poland, that it will just make those concrete voters still faithful till 2027. However, I would say that this may also have a consolidating effect on voters of Donald Tusk and his government. And it's also strengthened by the fact that former Minister of Education, Przemysław Czarnek, has become, let's say, appointed by Law and Justice as the future, or the Prime Minister to be. We'll see how it will.
And also because the government actually promises to deliver these funds through Plan B.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a bit more about the details of this Plan B? I mean, how is it possible to obtain the loan without presidential approval?
Yes, so SAFE is a regulation of the European Council and the Parliament, which basically means that it will, the European Council, it will bring its effect anyway. It does not require implementation like directives, for example, which basically means that it will be there anyway and operational anyway. However, without the law, which puts, let's say, certain technicalities and also logistics and structure in place, it will be simply harder. So now within the Plan B, it will just, the money will come anyway, but it will come if everything goes well with the European Commission, because now the discussions will be there, because the previous law was fully basically accepted by the European Commission. Now the Plan B will need a bit of a new acceptance. And if the consent from the European Commission is there, and it seems it's almost there, the money will come in April, so the first tranche of the money, the first part. And of course, now the European Commission will most probably not fully agree on the money for the police, for the border control, and so on, because it was a little bit different idea. The VAT is also going to be paid most probably. Also, the budget of the Ministry of Defense will not be protected, which paradoxically means that the US will most probably get fewer chances to get orders from Poland.
Which is the exact opposite.
Exactly. So, but I don't require much of an intellectual input and effort to understand actually how it works from, let's say, the presidential camp, which thinks, I would say, that they do well to the United States and Donald Trump, but in fact, it's exactly the opposite. But as I said, why they do it, it's more politically grounded here, speaking about domestic aspects and not really only foreign aspects. But the plan B will simply delay the money transfer to Poland, and also will make it a bit harder, because then, now we had 12,000 companies that would get the money, have a chance to get the money immediately. Now it will be probably fewer companies, it will have to be still newly contracted, and this takes time, obviously. And of course, it may take time also to get acceptance, to get consent from the European Commission. So this will be simply harder. But this government will do it, of course, because they have no other option, basically. And it's also for the sake of the Polish people. What the president has just done has operated against the Polish society. By the way, the majority of the Polish society, as Marcin Zaborowski has just said, was for European safe. So president basically acted against the Polish society, the Polish majority.
Renata Mieńkowska-Norkiene, Professor of Political Science from the University of Warsaw.
Thank you. Thank you.
And you were watching World Talks. I'm Paweł Trzaskowski. Please stay with us for more updates.